Hello. Uh, well, today I'm going to be talking about The Empire Strikes Back for its 45th anniversary. And while I have not actually gotten to see the movie in theaters yet, because it actually isn't playing anywhere near here soon, though next month it will be, so uh, I will definitely let you all know how that experience is when I do see it. I still thought it was a good time to just talk about the movie in general. I mean, I've spoken about it before, so. Um, but, obviously, a lot of people still consider this to be one of the best sequels ever made. It's often ranked up there with The Godfather Part 2, The Dark Knight, um, Terminator 2, and various other sequels, which people will say is either just as good, if not better, than the original film or the first film. Um, so obviously, all right, I cut that with my arm. So this is the film that brought up to us all Yoda, and it's interesting how George Lucas actually said part of the reason why he had or the big reason why he had Yoda speak the way he does is because got to get people to pay attention to him. Especially since these films were particularly aimed at 12-year-olds for the original film and this film and Return of the Jedi, and then of course the prequels, all aimed at those who are of an age where they're about to have a certain transition in their life where you get even more responsibility and on your way to becoming an adult. And so for those kids in particular, that are aimed at, whenever Yoda says something that's supposed to be very, meaningful and important, if he just says it normally, it's not going to potentially register as it should, because, you could have just not have killed Obi-Wan off in the previous film and then have him say all this stuff, which obviously that was the original plan, but then George Lucas is like, I actually, being able to have George or Alec Guinness here be kind of a waste of his talent if the last portion of the film he's just standing around while a space battle happens and he's not a part of it. So he killed off Obi-Wan, has him remain as a spirit, a force ghost as it is now, which we see him here where he's like a blue ghost speaking to Luke throughout the film. And then, of course, he tells him to go to Dagobah to visit, to speak to Yoda, where he's able to, be able to complete his training. And, but yeah, Yoda speaks backwards for the most part. And it's very cool. This film is written by Lee Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan. However, George Lucas actually rewrote most of what Lee Brackett wrote, and by that I mean he really removed pretty much most of it, and because when he read her script, he thought this doesn't totally fit with what I had in mind and hoped, for the film to be, and he was talking to her about certain changes to do on the next draft, but then she passed away because of cancer. And so, because of that, he gave her credit, even though most of the stuff she contributed did not end up in the movie at all. they were talking about Yoda, and I believe, her particular description of Yoda being very short, like the specific height he is in the film, that is, I believe that was a major contribution that is in the film. And of course, George Lucas kind of liked the idea of a small wizard-like important character who, at first, you don't know who, you know, this creature is, and then we find out this is Yoda, and he had this facade of being a goofy, uh, old creature who's lost his marbles and is just saying and doing whatever. Um, all the while, Luke's like he's just getting more and more frustrated because he wants to see Yoda, and this character is supposed to take him to Yoda, but takes him to his home, and it's raining. But now we find out who he really is. And another thing, is like, Darth Vader throughout the whole film, he is looking for Luke. And it's not until the very end of the film we find out why he's looking for Luke and why he wants him so badly. I mean, obviously, he and the Emperor speak for a moment. And, it's like if they can get him on their side, he would be a powerful ally, and basically the Jedi wouldn't exist anymore. And so, converting him to the dark side would be great for them. But then, of course, we know at the end that it's revealed that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. Spoiler after all these years, if you haven't, if you didn't know that. But even people who have never even watched these movies know that, because no, I am your father. That's such a huge, iconic line that actually gets missed. It's misquoted, but misquoted in a way that makes sense, because if you just say the line, no, I am your father, people would be confused, because it's like, what are you talking about? What are you referring to? You're not my dad. But if you add Luke, and then before that, then everybody knows what you're talking about. You're talking about Star Wars or Empire Strikes Back in particular. And of course, they're chasing the Millennium Falcon with Han, Chewie, and Leia, and 3PO on board, while Luke and R2 are with Yoda. And then Han and everyone go to Bespin, to Cloud City, where they meet Lando Calrissian, an old friend of Han's, played by Billy D. Williams, who was excellent, and Frank Oz is Yoda, also puppets him. I don't know if I said this before, some years ago when I talked about all the movies, but Jim Henson was initially the one actually approached by George Lucas to be Yoda. And while he actually was very happy and kind, to George Lucas, and I don't know, happy. It was pleasant. He's very pleasant and kind and cordial and all that. But he was busy with other things, and so he recommended Frank Oz, who did Miss Piggy and other Muppet characters. And of course, we have Yoda as we know him now. And I believe Bespin is another thing that Lee Brackett actually contributed with the particular way that it was written for the descriptions and everything and what we saw. And there are some other things like that she contributed that did end up, but they're all, at the end of the day, very small things. And to get credit for like a script like this, you actually have to have 50% of your work be in the movie. And since most of it was thrown out, In any other circumstances, she would not have gotten credit for this movie. George Lucas made sure she got credit though, because he liked her work and he liked her, and it's very unfortunate she passed away when she did of cancer. Um, and Lawrence Kasdan, he pretty much took George Lucas's second draft and just cleaned up here and there. He didn't really add much, because also if you do a rewrite, like you have to add like 50% or so to the script, so that way it's half of the original person's script as well as half yours. That way it's a blend of the two together. That way everybody can get credit. But again, George Lucas, he gave credit to Lawrence Kasdan. He didn't have to, but he did. And he just gets a story by credit, because he did create the outline. He had an original script for Star Wars, which was like, depending on what you hear and read about the making of the original trilogy or the saga as a whole, some sources will say 250 pages, which is for the most part the reoccurring number for what the overall original script that was too big, that Lucas had to then take in certain acts, like this is Act 1, this is Act 2, and this is Act 3. And at the very beginning of Act 1, there's a little bit of background just for some basic setup to then get into what is now Episode 4, A New Hope, the original Star Wars. Which, of course, that little backstory then became the prequels, which then, of course, led into the original trilogy as we know it. Now, this was also the first time we got to see the Emperor Palpatine, on a hologram originally, voiced by a man. Name is blanking offhand. He passed away some time ago, but I can't recall the man's name offhand, unfortunately. But they redid the entire scene, so now it's Ian McDiarmid who played him, as he did in the prequels and Return of the Jedi. So they just refilmed that whole scene. Some bits of a little new dialogue, and that way it could all make more sense on a chronological sense when you watch them 1 through 6. Han gets frozen in carbonite, which many people say that's because Harrison Ford never signed a contract to do 3 films, like Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher did. Though he was always on a film-by-film basis, he wasn't sure he wanted to commit to doing 3 movies. However, in interviews, if you can find them, they're scattered on the internet. Sometimes they get taken down because of some of the interviews. It could be like owned by a certain company, and the official company's YouTube channel or whatever did not upload it, so that has to be taken down because that's theirs. And so sometimes you can see them scattered here and there on the internet and YouTube. But there was an interview where, I think around Raiders of the Lost Ark, he was speaking to somebody. Could be David Letterman or Johnny Carson or someone like that. But he mentioned how, they'll do more Star Wars. And he was actually interested and excited. He's like, this is supposed to be the end. George wanted to do, the 3, and he's going to do it, and I'm going to be there with him. Though, of course, we know he thought it would be a good idea for Han Solo to die in Return of the Jedi. Like, he didn't think he had much of a future or anything. Of course, he did for George Lucas, but And so he's like, no, he's not gonna die. And so George Lucas kept Han Solo alive at the end, and but he was frozen because I mean they just weren't sure what to do with his character. Plus, you kind of need some stakes to lead up into the next film. He's been frozen and then taken to Jabba the Hutt. So, what's gonna happen? Obviously, you gotta wait. Like back then, you had to wait 3 years for Return of the Jedi. But yeah, Luke finds out who his dad is, and he's like, "Why didn't Obi-Wan tell him?" Gets a new robotic hand, and Lando is on their side after betraying them because the Empire got there before they all did, and so he didn't really have a choice in the matter. And yeah, it's a very good film, excellent film. It is an excellent sequel. I definitely understand and can even agree it belonging in one of the best sequels ever made with Godfather 2, The Dark Knight, Terminator 2. I would never say it's better than the original Star Wars, in my opinion. That's my favorite of the not only the Star Wars franchise, but also just my favorite movie in general. But I definitely appreciate this movie in many ways. It did expand the universe very well. You know, a lot of people are like, Darth Vader is really interesting in this film, which we don't totally find out his true motivations until the very end of the film. We kind of also think we know it because of his conversation with Palpatine. But even then, that's sort of kind of meh. Only Palpatine wants him to the dark side. Darth Vader, who he just wants his son, whom he thought died with, Padme in Revenge of the Sith. Because, she died, and it's kind of it's fairly logical to think that, if she died, then the baby died. But yeah. So when I see this on the big screen, I'll talk about it again next month. But because there is a difference between seeing this, these movies on your TV at home, as well as on the big screen. The theatrical experience is really the best experience. No matter what people say, it is just better. In my opinion, it's just better. I'd rather watch these movies back and forth on the big screen than, like on a phone. you know, these movies being back to back would be great. Didn't really ever happen here or anywhere around here, unfortunately. I don't recall, back when they had The Force Awakens in 2015, I do not recall them ever playing these films anywhere here. I think that was sort of like in select cities, honestly, and yeah. Iowa would never be a state where we would really get that kind of thing because Iowa isn't apparently cool. But places like Chicago, that's important. Chicago and Kansas City, those are like the big Midwest cities that would absolutely get stuff like that. But Des Moines or anywhere in Iowa nearby, no, we don't get that stuff. But yeah. But I will see this on the big screen, and I will make a video next month and tell you what that experience was like. So yeah, it should be fun. And so, this is 45 years old now. So yeah, I just wanted to come on and just make a video about the film's 45th anniversary. And hopefully you liked it. And of course, you can always go back and watch the video I made years ago when I guess talked more in detail about uh, this film as well as the other 6 films. Also, I accidentally bumped the camera a bit as well as coughed. So sorry if the new angle at the very end is a bit odd, but yeah. Anyway, hope this was good. Hope all of you are doing well. We're all having a great day and have had a great week, and I hope you'll have a great weekend, and I'll see you all next time. Take care. Bye.